Hi everyone, and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. So I'm really happy to be joined by Aryn Van Dyke, who is a book marketing expert, and she's also the founder of Book Rockstar. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
No, it's good to see you again because we met each other first time in Author Nation. So it's really good
Yeah,
to catch up with people from there. It was a really good show. If people are thinking about going to one of these shows in future, I think. Did you
absolutely.
did you enjoy
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it was great. I was there as a vendor for the industry expo, and so that was great just to get to talk with a lot of different authors who were attending. But then I actually sat in on a lot of the sessions that they had, and I mean, to me, like they were super valuable, and I've already taken a lot of what I learned in the sessions as because as an expert and consultant, like I'm always trying to make sure I'm learning so that I can be teaching the kind of the right techniques and strategies. And so it was a super valuable conference for me. And so if you're an author who's thinking about going to next year's, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing to be in the room with some of these people who have sold like 5 million books.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So today we're going to be talking about one of your main bits of expertise, which is LinkedIn
Yeah,
marketing for authors. So
yeah,
LinkedIn is obviously something that a lot of authors don't really think about because it's not that
yeah.
creative. It's kind of that boring professional social network where people just brag about their getting promotion or some of those weird posts you see. So why is LinkedIn important for authors?
Yeah, so it's so many people have the perception that you're kind of describing as this professional, boring network, like social media network, but it's actually like totally opposite of that, especially when you can find the right audience. So for me, it's actually become my favorite social media platform.
Right.
It's helped me, I mean, one, just meet a lot of other publishing professionals in my network, but and two, most importantly, it's helped me find business. It's helped me grow my own business. And so, I mean, that's something where, authors can translate, that same type of strategy for finding readers, selling books. If you're a nonfiction author, finding speaking engagements or even business clients to come in. So I mean, LinkedIn is a just one of those social media networks that is just gets underutilized and overlooked, but it's actually an awesome like ecosystem and network for authors to be finding their readers, sharing their expertise, and kind of building their overall brand and businesses.
Right. So we're talking mostly for non-fiction authors, you think, with the LinkedIn marketing?
It's definitely going to be the most helpful and beneficial for nonfiction, but even fiction authors. I mean, I've got a client right now who wrote a financial thriller, and he's actually used LinkedIn in some creative ways because he's got this whole professional network from his time in banking, and it's been really cool to see everyone's responses to him talking about his book. And because of his book having that kind of financial aspect to it, he's been able to connect a lot of the dots, and a lot of the people who he's connected to professionally have interest in that kind of topic. And so I mean, even for fiction, it's a great platform to be sharing this side passion that you have, this thing that you've been working really hard on in the early hours and the late nights. So while it's definitely helpful for nonfiction and kind of a non-negotiable for a lot of nonfiction authors, you shouldn't count it out completely if you write in fiction either.
Right. So, I mean, how does LinkedIn help authors connect with niche audiences? Is there a specific
Yeah.
techniques you use to try and find the right audience for your posts, or is it just a case of putting a post out there and waiting to see what happens?
No, it's what I where I always start when I'm working with an author is really pulling out the key messages that revolve around your book. So I go through a messaging exercise with all of my clients, which we're essentially trying to figure out, all right, what specifically is your book about? Who is it for? Like, who in particular is this serving? What are they experiencing? What are their challenges? What are their questions? What are their desires? Really figuring out, all right, how does the book help solve some of these problems, answer some of these questions? And so when we can, pull out some of those pieces and start to identify the messaging around it, we can start crafting post ideas that speak to that exact audience. You're saying exactly how your book is helping. And so going through and doing a little bit of that pre-work can help you identify, all right, here are some post topics and ideas that you can use that is actually connecting your book with the target audience. This can look, different for different authors. So, I mean, for some authors, it's, posing more questions and then having your posts answer some maybe of these like hot questions that your target audience is dealing with. For other authors, it might be more like story driven or story led type of posts that do the best. But I think when I first start off with an author, I really encourage them to try different variations, kind of different types of templates, and then going back and looking at the data and seeing, oh, okay, this post that was really story driven got a ton of engagement. And so how can we use that same format with a different story, for the next month? So just kind of throwing something up there with no strategy is usually not going to work. Maybe every once in a while it does. So really my big focus on the beginning of all these, all of my projects with clients is, what is your book about? Who are we talking to? And how can we craft posts and content that is going to speak directly to that person? So there's no questions. We can kind of really hook them with the book from the get-go.
Nice. So, I mean, one thing that is quite different with LinkedIn compared to other social medias is obviously you've got your profile, which is quite complete. It's almost a bit like Facebook used to be, but you can create this, it's basically like a CV, isn't it, for the professional work you do. Now, if you've written a book, how do you get that book into your profile without it, especially for some people who have still got jobs and they're still working on their profile as like to get new career, to advance their career further on. How do you get your book onto there without it making look weird?
Yeah, so there'd be a few different places that you could consider, integrating your book. And so this is something where you could put it in all of these places, or you could kind of take it one step at a time, because I know I've had clients who they've got a day job, they're a little bit nervous about, ruffling any feathers with their company. And so sometimes it's finding just like the little places that they can make tweaks. But I mean, you've got that whole like cover image that you can use. So you can, make a nice banner that's got your book in it. You can kind of pull out maybe like an identifying statement or kind of a quick phrase that, can hook readers in. So that's one place you can talk about your book. You've got a headline as well. And so this is something where that's going to be right underneath your name. And a lot of people will have just a very generic, oh, I'm manager at this company, or, say like sales professional doing XYZ. But that's a space you can be talking about your book. If you're a nonfiction author and your book helps sales leaders get more leads, you could say, I help sales professionals increase their leads, and then you can have a line that says author of, sales lead generator. So that's another space you can really use to push forward your book. You've got an about section. So you can, talk about yourself there and kind of talk about the fact that you've got this book and it exists to help people accomplish this goal. There's a space called the featured section, which is probably one of my favorite places to incorporate a book. And so this is where authors can put in a direct link to a website, to an Amazon page, and you can customize the thumbnail, you can customize the copy that goes in there. And so I love this space because we can put in a designed graphic in this thumbnail space that's got the picture of the book. We can have it go straight to the Amazon page or wherever they're really wanting to drive those sales. You can also put yourself, you can create almost like a job experience as author. That's another creative way that you can showcase your book, even if you've got a 9-to-5 job. So for me, when there are kind of competing factors on LinkedIn, like wanting to use it as a space to find a new job or to kind of have that expertise within your company, I like to remind authors that writing a book is a cool side project. I mean, that is like, I would say companies who are looking to hire, they're going to want to hire multifaceted individuals. And so being able to talk about your book and showcase that as something that you're proud of, a piece that you've worked on. I mean, that's a cool thing that most people don't do, and you can use that to your advantage in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think especially if you've written your book, like you say, as almost like a calling card for your business or for your job.
Yeah,
I think you should be proud of putting it on there. You shouldn't be hiding it.
absolutely.
Because, I mean, it'd be a pretty weird company that would fire you because you're writing a book about the job you do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel. So it's a good place and space to say, you know what, I'm a professional person. I've got all of these really great insights into my field or industry. But also, I'm not just doing that on a 9 to 5 basis. I've taken my time to put it into this resource as a kind of as a side project, as this thing that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, of course. So when you've created your amazing profile, the next step is obviously to start creating some content. So what are the best
Mhm.
types of posts you found that work for nonfiction authors?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say it's a mix, and it will depend on what your different subgenre is or theme. So, I mean, for books that are more of that maybe framework, advice, tips, I really like calling out, 5 ways to do blank, or 7 things to keep in mind as you approach blank. Having those types of posts can be really helpful for authors that might be a little bit more like memoir driven, or if it's even if it's like a business memoir, it's having some of those stories. Like when I was 23, I went to my first day on my job, and I experienced blank. So like, it's I would say stories are always really great. Those kind of like any sort of tips or advice, like action items you can share, that's really great. And I would also say having kind of these maybe strong opinions, and having that as that hook of something that maybe not everyone in your industry agrees with this point that you agree with. And so being sometimes a little bit like controversial can be a good way to get people engaging with your content and paying attention to what you have to say.
I like those controversial ones. There's a Twitter
Mm,
profile called something like the state of LinkedIn or something like that, which
yeah.
posts the worst LinkedIn posts ever. And one of them was something like what the downfall of Assad can tell you about B2B sales marketing and stuff like that. And you're like, so
Yeah.
maybe avoid those ones.
Yeah, there's always going to be the line that maybe don't cross. But yeah, it's having, really just trying to get creative with it. And that's the other thing too. If you're an author, if you've written this book, there's kind of that level of creativity that you can put into writing your LinkedIn posts. I kind of like to say too is, you kind of have when you're writing your book, you've got kind of that first line to try and draw people in and get them intrigued of what the rest of these 200 pages are going to hold. Is kind of the same thing with LinkedIn. You've got that first line at the top, and that is going to depend on whether someone clicks to see more or not, and whether they're going to engage with what you have to say. So really think creatively about this, and use LinkedIn as a way to almost like you're writing a little mini book, so to speak. And
Hmm.
I think the other thing I'll kind of add in here when it comes to like what to be posting is putting in some sort of creative piece with with the content that you're sharing. So you've got to have that killer copy, copy that's going to draw people in and catch attention. But it's also important to have, a photo, have a video, have some sort of infographic that's going to kind of tie together and also kind of be that eye-catching piece for people who are scrolling on the platform.
Yeah, that's great. Now, with LinkedIn, it's quite important to do networking. I mean, all social media is the same, but
Mhm.
I think with LinkedIn particularly, it's all about like chatting to people, saying congrats on the new job, that sort of thing. And if you're teaching someone who's marketing a book, what would be your advice to get them to network? Like, for example, are there particular groups or are there particular ways to comment on things that help build those
Mhm.
relationships?
Oh yeah, and that's a big piece of it too. Is you've got to have the content piece, but you've got to have the commenting piece. And so finding people who are going to be either like other industry experts, going and being very intentional about leaving comments on their posts. If you can identify maybe target readers, and going and commenting on some of their stuff. So again, I'll use the same example. If you're trying to reach like sales manager, go try and find some sales managers on LinkedIn and leave some comments on any of their recent posts, because commenting is a great way to get that added visibility. And just the way that the LinkedIn platform is set up right now is, it's almost like 50-50, like posts and comments. And so the more that you can engage with other people's posts, the more that your kind of name is getting out there. And again, you've got that headline that goes right underneath your name. So every comment that you leave, people see your name, they see your picture, and they see your headline. And so if you can use your book in that space, then you're really getting that extra foot forward of getting your book in front of people.
Yeah.
It's also great for that networking side. So if you can network with other industry professionals, then that could lead to a speaking invitation. It could lead to a maybe like collaborative workshop or webinar. So there's so many benefits to taking 20 minutes a day to go leave some really thoughtful, engaging comments, maybe sending 5 to 10 connection requests within, to people who would be in your kind of target audience or niche. I mean, those are kind of the little kind of unspoken pieces of LinkedIn that can be a huge benefit for authors, and most people aren't doing that on a daily basis.
I think the commenting is quite interesting because on other social medias, you might be a bit nervous to comment on people if they're like your friends. So all the people that on LinkedIn we've kind of met professionally, and I've done a post before and someone's commented on it that I worked with like 12 years ago and haven't spoken to them since, which I think is okay. But if you're on Facebook and you're just messaging someone like that you met at university 12 years ago, you'd probably be a bit weird to comment on their post.
Yeah, I would feel the same way with that. And that's, I think, what makes LinkedIn kind of special is, and also like if you see a stranger's post, like you can go in and comment, or someone that maybe you only know through LinkedIn, you can go and leave those comments. And it's such a vibrant community and networking platform that, I mean, I'll kind of joke sometimes is I've got like a ton of what I call like online friends, and there are people who I've connected with on LinkedIn, and we live in different parts of the world and we've never met in person, but we engage on a regular basis on the LinkedIn platform. And so it's a cool space to start getting involved, start getting start engaging there, because you never know what types of relationships you can make. Just this last week, I had a message in my DMs asking for me to come speak somewhere next spring. It's someone who I've never talked to before, but someone who, in this message, they said they've been following me for a long time. They've been seeing my content. They've, been enjoying my content. And this is someone who's been kind of the LinkedIn lurker, as they say. And so you just never know, who's paying attention to what you have to say. And the more you can start getting content out there, the more people are going to be engaging with it. But also, even the people who aren't actively engaging are still paying attention. So again, it's just choosing to start and keep with it, and really focusing on who your target audience is, how to be connecting with them in the most meaningful way, and then just staying consistent with the posting, stay consistent with the commenting, and doing everything that you can to just build a really strong and niche network around you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Now, this sounds like quite a lot of work. So do you have any tools you use to help you to organize any of this stuff? So not I don't mean just like tools which help you to plan your posts. I mean, are there any other tools which help you to make the post as good as possible, or to make sure you're following the right people, or anything like that?
Yeah, there's definitely some like LinkedIn creators that I'd recommend following, because you can get a lot of great inspiration and insight from them. So one of them is Kate Ladon. She's a great personal branding expert, particularly within the LinkedIn space. Holly Crashaw is really great as well, of really sharing post templates in particular of what's going to be the right way to formulate these posts. So go as much as possible, follow people on LinkedIn who are crushing it, because you can get a lot of inspiration there in terms of how to actually format your posts. I would say too, even building a simple content calendar in a Google Sheet or an Excel sheet, that can be a helpful way for you to start planning ahead, so that you can kind of start pre-writing. And if you can set 30 minutes or maybe an hour on Monday mornings to write your posts for the next week or 2 weeks, that can be helpful. There's scheduling tools, like there's Later. I use one called Loomly. There's Buffer. But even with LinkedIn, you can schedule within the LinkedIn platform itself. So you don't even necessarily need the third-party schedulers, because you can do that in LinkedIn. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use tools, whether they're like paid programs or just creating your own. Again, even ChatGPT, AI tools can help you get some content ideas, or it might be able to help you even with grammar. I've had, posts with clients where we've thrown them into ChatGPT and said, are there any grammar mistakes, or like what would you fix here? And it will give some slight adjustments. So there's really kind of endless tools and possibilities that you can use to make sure that your LinkedIn content is the best that it can be. So it's finding what works for you, and trying to set some time on a weekly basis to really get the content written, and maybe getting some of the ideas down, pre-planning your calendar. And then when it comes to some of that daily engagement and commenting, just having that be the first 10 minutes of your day when you sit down at your computer, or when you're eating your breakfast, having the app on your phone and doing some comments there, and then, going straight to work. So there's a lot of like little ways that you can start to integrate this into your daily routine that makes it a little bit less overwhelming.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm definitely guilty of not following that advice that you've just given. So it's something I need to work on too. Are there any big mistakes that you see authors especially make when they're marketing on LinkedIn? I've sometimes see people just over promoting themselves, for example, but are there any mistakes you often see?
Yeah, and I would say the biggest one is not including any sort of like creative piece with their post.
By
I
that, do you
mean,
mean like a picture or a video or something?
yeah, so text only posts are just like the worst type of content and the worst like format that you could share. Unless you've got a huge and pre-established following, you should always try and put some sort of, video, photo, infographic in with your post. But I do see like a lot of authors who, they might be a little bit shy to share a photo of themselves, or maybe they just don't, they don't take the time to go and get a, stock photo that might even be relevant. But all of those things are going to be, huge in helping with the engagement and visibility of your post. So I'd say that is like probably one of the biggest no-nos. I think the other thing too is, being, keep like having their posts be a bit too over promotional. And that ties back to what I said about doing that work with the messaging, because I see a lot of people where it's just like, oh, my book is available, go buy it on Amazon now. And that's the only way they talk about their book. But if you can start to identify some of those needs of your audience, then you're talking about your book without really making it this overly promotional post. So, taking that extra time, setting aside maybe an hour or 2 hours to say, all right, what can I really find out about my audience so that I can talk about my book in a way that's more meaningful than just holding up a copy and saying, go to Amazon, because I see those posts all the time, but you're not actually telling anybody what your book is about or why it's beneficial for their journey.
Yeah, that's pretty good advice. Now, working with you, a lot of this stuff it's not just about the strategy, it's about making sure those posts are as good as possible. So what does that look like when authors work with you, especially for LinkedIn?
Yeah, so when I do work with authors for LinkedIn, it usually looks like setting up a kind of pre-session. So that first thing I always do is the messaging exercise. And then we'll usually go like by a monthly basis and say, all right, we can do, like 20 to 30 posts a month. And, I can help create like the graphic pieces. And so it looks different for each author, just depending on, how much they want to contribute to the actual content writing, because I have some clients who they don't have like the time or interest. And so they kind of just want to get a whole suite of posts sent to them and put their stamp of approval on it and, kind of go about their day. But I have other authors who they like the creative process. And so they're more interested in the overall kind of strategy, insight, kind of like the templates. And then they're happy to kind of go with that. So it looks a little bit different for each person, but I mean, at the kind of very base of it, it's, really, working with me means that we really find out what is the message, how can we communicate this in a meaningful way, and then, either strategy for, inspiration, ideas for how you can start to, use this messaging, in your own posts, or kind of handing over the reins and saying, yeah, I kind of need some help with the overall writing aspect. And, it's not my strong point, or, I don't have enough time for it. And that's something where I can take that on for them.
Oh, amazing. So if people want to get in contact with you, where's the best place to do that?
Best place to do that, I mean, I'll say LinkedIn. So you can search for me on LinkedIn, Aryn, Aryn Van Dyke. But you can also visit my website. It's bookrockstar.com. So I've got some other, packages and services around book marketing, but there's a place there you can sign up for my email list. You can book a free discovery call. You can book even a single consultation session where we can talk about LinkedIn specifically, or even other book marketing strategies that you might have questions about.
Yeah, amazing. We should do a roast of my profile so that people can see what it looks like to have a good one.
I think there's always things that even I feel like there's posts I make that I'm just like, oh, that sounds like AI. I'm like, how did I approve this for myself? So I think there's always going to be certain aspects of someone's profile that is just the palm in the head.
Everyone started writing ChatGPT, just delving into different situations, things like that.
Yeah. If I never see the word delve again, I will be happy.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really useful to hear, and I've learned loads from the conversation too. So just before we go, we've asked one question to everyone. And that's, what's a book do you recommend everyone should be reading?
Yeah. So there's one, I'll say it because it's a client's book. I have it right here, and it's, I think, super valuable for professionals at really any stage of life. So it's called Own Your Influence. It's by Sherenne Simon, but it's been a really fantastic resource for me, even to learn about just some of these unspoken things about business and how can you kind of level up and kind of really approach different situations in the professional world and navigate them with confidence, kind of with the way to make the biggest impact. So it's been a really great resource for me personally, and I know a lot of others will really enjoy reading it and learning Sherenne's tips.
Great. Well, I'll put the links in the show notes so everyone can find it on LinkedIn.
Amazing.
And find it on Amazon. Well,
awesome.
Thanks for coming on, Aryn. It's been great chatting to you, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Hopefully. Thanks for having me, Teddy.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1.